All of a sudden, off to my right was this presence, not something that I could see with my eyes, but a presence just 2 feet away from me. And it was the presence of Jesus just filled that room, and I just burst into tears. And there was no clear view that I could see, but the presence was so strong.
Hello, friends, and welcome to today's video from Jews for Jesus. I'm Jeff Morgan, and we have a fascinating video for you today. Dr. James Tour, one of the world's top scientists, is joining us, and today he'll be sharing his story about how a Jewish kid and leading scientist from New York City became a believer, follower, and lover of Jesus. Today, we have a very special guest. Dr. James Tour is with us today, and wow, this is a treat. We're going to be talking about science and faith, which many people today don't think go together, but au contraire. We will get into that for sure. But before we start, I have to introduce this man. Dr. Tour has a PhD in organic chemistry, T.T. and W.F. Chow Professor of Chemistry at Rice University. He's a fellow of Royal Society of Chemistry, fellow of the National Academy of Inventors. He has over 650 research publications, probably more by now. He's been R&D Magazine's Scientist of the Year, part of the National Academy of Inventors, member of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. He has over 120 patents. He started multiple companies. He works in fields ranging from medicine to material science, computer memory, medical devices, and more. He's received numerous honors and awards, named in the top 50 of the most influential scientific minds in the world, and is a passionate Jewish follower of Jesus, or how we call him here in Israel, Yeshua. Dr. Tour, what a pleasure it is to have you here on the channel. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jeff. Glad to be here.
Yeah, this is so exciting because both of us are Jewish. Both of us love Jesus, and we're going to be talking about how that works in a logical manner and within a world that demands scientific proof that God even exists. So let's start off with this. How does a Jewish guy like yourself, raised just outside of New York City, come to know Jesus as Messiah, Son of God, and Savior of the world?
Well, sometimes these things are a little bit of a process. I was working actually on the Hutchinson River Parkway and in a gas station when I was younger, and I started working when I was 14. And sometimes I'd work the night shift, and people would sometimes come in and hand me a tract. And on the night shifts, we had a lot of time to sit around and read, and I would read these tracts, and they just kind of struck me. But I wasn't really confronted with the gospel until I went to college at the age of 18. And a young man shared with me the bridge illustration of the gospel, where there's man on one side and God on the other. And I was really shaken by it. I was shaken by it because I had become addicted to pornography at the age of 14. Working in the gas station, I found magazines in the trash, and so by the time I was 18, I was a pornography addict. There was no internet in those days. It was all by magazines. And I went to college, and he shared with me a verse that says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." And I looked at him, I said, "I'm not a sinner," because in my secular Jewish context, you had to really hurt somebody to be a sinner. You had to rob a bank or kill somebody. And I told him, I never robbed a bank. I never killed anyone. How could I be a sinner? And then he had me read a verse from Matthew 5:28 that says, "I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart." And at that moment, I was deeply convicted. And it's interesting. Why should I be convicted? Why should I care what somebody said 2,000 years ago? What does it have to do with me?
Yeah.
But there's something about the words of Yeshua that just shake a person. And it said, "You've committed adultery in your heart." I knew adultery was wrong. Even though I was a secular Jew, I knew adultery was wrong. And how could I commit it in my heart? I mean, I haven't done it with my hands. How could I do it with my heart? And then it said to look at a woman with lust for her. I didn't know how to look at a woman any other way. That's the only way I knew how to look at a woman. And so I was deeply convicted, and he shared the gospel with me. But what struck me the most was what happened that semester. I didn't receive the Lord right there. He could have probably closed the deal if he had been better at it. But I was impressed by people that said that they were born-again Christians. Now, I had known that Jimmy Carter at the time had said that he was a born-again Christian, so I'd heard that term, which sounded odd to me.
Yeah.
But one of the things that struck me, for example, I would go to the cafeteria, and there was a group of Christians that was sitting at this table. And when you're young and you go into a cafeteria, you never want to have to sit alone. And they'd say, "Hey, Jim, come and sit with us." So I'd sit with them. And what struck me more than anything was their laughter. When they were laughing, they were never laughing at somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And all of us have been on the receiving end of that sort of laughter, and it hurts. But their laughter was never taking a toll on anybody. And these were good people, and they were non-threatening. And so it opened my heart more. And then I started attending a little Bible study on my floor. But then in November 7th, 1977, so he shared with me in the end of August, here it is November 7th, I just got on my knees in my room. And I don't know why I got on my knees. Most Jews I knew stood when they prayed, and most Christians sat when they prayed. And I got on my knees and I said, "Lord, forgive me because I'm a sinner, and come into my life." And I felt this amazing peace of God drop on me. And this burden of sin that I had been carrying since August about this accusation that I was an adulterer just started to lift from me. And then all of a sudden, off to my right was this presence, not something that I could see with my eyes, but a presence just 2 feet away from me. And it was the presence of Jesus just filled that room. And I just burst into tears. And there was no clear view that I could see, but the presence was so strong. And I didn't feel afraid at all. I just felt love and acceptance and kindness and forgiveness packaged up and poured out upon me. And I don't even know how long I was there. I don't know how long I was there. I just was burst into tears. And it's an unusual thing for me because I can have a good friend, even to this day, a good friend can die, and I won't cry for more than 30 seconds, and I'm done. But I just couldn't stop weeping. And then the next thing I know, I was standing up, wiping my face, and something happened to me that day. Something happened to me. And then the young man that had shared with me back in August, he lived on my floor. He saw me a few weeks later. He said, "Jim, have you received Jesus in your heart?" I said, "I think I have. Why do you ask?" He said, "You haven't stopped smiling for weeks." Something happened to me on that day. And it changed what I wanted to do in life, how I wanted to, the kind of person that I wanted to marry, the kind of career that I wanted to have. And I just started reading the Bible every day, because this young man shared with me. I said, "How can I stay close to God? How can I do this?" He said, "If you read your Bible every day, you'll stay close to God. If you don't, you won't." And I started reading the Bible every day. And I've been doing this for more than 43 years. And now I start in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. And I'm in no hurry. I just read pensively and carefully. And then I pick up where I left off the day before. And then when I'm done in Revelation chapter 22, I start again. And I just do this over and over. I'm in no hurry. I don't try to get done with the Bible in a year. If God wanted me done with it in a year, he just said, "Get done with this book in a year." I mean, I just go slowly and I just read it over and over. So that was a long answer to a short question.
No, I love your answers. I want to talk for a second about that weeping. You and I have similar stories. When I came to faith, I wept for a year, James. I literally, every day, tears of joy. I was the one going to church with my hands up in the front row, just jumping up and down for a year and crying at every worship song. I was so floored and so convicted all at the same time. And these changes that you're talking about happened to us, through us, in us. It's not like self-help where you go and you go through some steps and you try to exchange bad behaviors for good. I mean, I'm talking behaviors that are wiped out, habits that are erased, and things that are changed. I can so relate to that. But being a Jewish follower of Jesus these days is much more common than in the last 50 years, especially in the last decade. Jewish people all over the world are seeking, they're thinking for themselves. Many have become disillusioned by Eastern mysticism, New Age practices, and are exercising the courage to read the New Testament and discover for themselves the Jewishness of this book and who they believe Jesus is, instead of having that decision made for them 2,000 years ago. So another story I found really touching and inspiring was your Jewish mother's journey to faith in Yeshua. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, shortly after that, my conversion, I came out with it. I mean, I told my family, I told my cousins, and my mom and dad didn't say much, but I know that it hurt them because they told me afterward that it had hurt them. But my sister had been into things, my brother had been into things, and I thought this was a fad that was just going to pass away.
Sure.
And a couple of years later, I moved into a house full of Christian guys that was owned by the pastor of the church, and it was sort of a discipleship program. There were two men's houses, and there was one women's house, and my mom came to visit, and she was really struck by all of this. She really wondered, what is this that I am into? And as a parent now, I can understand her concern.
Right.
And I said, well, why don't you read the New Testament and see what you think? And in fact, I took her to church one day, and in this particular church, we would get down on our knees and just worship. And she sat there, and she was in tears the whole time. And when I got done, I said, you must have been really touched in this service. She said, touched? Why do you think that? I said, you were weeping. She says, I'm weeping for you. I'm weeping for you. That you be in a place like this. I said, well, where should I be on a Sunday afternoon? She said, well, how about on the beach like any other normal human being? And so you can actually hear the Jewishness in that sort of response. And so she read the entire New Testament, and very carefully. My mother was a huge reader, so she really had a tremendous comprehension. And I said, what did you think? She said, I don't blame them for killing Jesus for the things that he said. I mean, who is he to stand up and say to the rabbis what he said, that you're whitewashed tombs? I mean, these men are just trying to help people's lives. And this young guy comes up and starts criticizing them like that. It's no wonder he got killed. And then I said, why don't you read the Old Testament? Read the whole thing. And so she did, something that most Jews, certainly secular Jews, have never done. And she picked it up in the book of Genesis, and she read the whole thing. And I asked her, I said, so what did you think of that? And she had some very strong things to say. And she said, God has obviously warned us over and over again. He warned us. Right. And then it was several years later, after my oldest daughter was 15, and she came to visit us with my father, and she went up. I remember she went up in my daughter's bedroom, and the two of them were in there for a couple of hours. And my daughter was quite evangelistic at that age. She came out, she said, that's quite some daughter you have. And she started reading the New Testament again. She was reading that along with the Case for Christ, along with that I had given her, and then along with an intervarsity devotional, which I don't even know where she got. And then one day she called me. We used to speak every Sunday, so I called her. I would call her every Sunday, and she got on the phone and she says, Jimmy, you won't believe this, but I believe Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And I was floored. I said, what happened? She said, I was reading the Bible, and I was reading the Case for Christ, and I was reading about how he was crucified, and it hit me. It hit me. He is the Son of God. Now, I've seen this, Jeff, where people are reading the New Testament, and I tell people, you read the New Testament twice, you become a believer in Yeshua. You become a believer in Jesus. You can't get through that document twice. Sometime during that sequence, and I've seen it with professors here on campus, I mean, it hits them. That document can speak for itself, and it hit her.
Wow.
She was 72 at the time, actually.
Hallelujah. Well, talking about evangelistic kids, just today my son calls me. He's at school. He calls me from school, and they study the Tanakh here. They study the Hebrew Bible in Hebrew. and he brings his own. It's in Hebrew, but it's the Old Testament and the New Testament, the Tanakh and the New Testament together in one book. And so his teacher looks at his book and says, "It looks a little bit different than what we use. Can I see it?" So she looks through it. She sees there's a New Testament in there, and she says, "Wow, this is really cool. I've always wanted to read the New Testament. Can you bring me one?" So my son's going to bring her another. We have the same version at home. He's going to bring her that tomorrow. Keep an eye out for our next video with James Tour as we discuss if Jewish people should stay away from the New Testament, if science has ever shaken his faith, and the origin of life debate. Jews for Jesus is a nonprofit organization that exists to support you as you explore Jewish life with faith in Jesus. We facilitate Jewish community all around the world, as well as provide spiritual care and local services. We also raise awareness about the fact that for thousands of years, there have been Jewish people like us who have embraced Jesus as the Jewish Messiah. And even though he was possibly the most famous Jewish person in all of history, there are still many Jewish people who have never had the chance to be exposed to the teachings of Jesus. And that's something we seek to change. For more information, to chat with us live and to sign up for our newsletter, check us out at jewsforjesus.org or on social media at Facebook and Instagram.